Usually, when we talk about a survival instinct, there is this expectation of a clean primal logic.
Yeah, exactly. Cause and effect.
Right. Like you touch a hot stove, your hand pulls back, and your brain just points to the burner and says, there it is, danger.
Yeah.
Avoid that.
Yes, absolutely.
We rely on that fundamental biological programming to keep us breathing. I mean, we build our entire concept of safety around the idea that threats are, well, recognizable and avoidable.
It is, it's really comforting to believe that the world operate on recognizable rules, even harsh ones,
Yeah, for sure.
We just assume natural selection has equipped us with the precise tools needed to navigate our environment, provided we pay attention to the warning signs, of course.
But then you step into the world of a dying Earth.
Oh, man. Yeah, that is a whole different ballgame.
It really is.
Yeah.
Imagine for a second a far future landscape where the sun itself is just like rotting in the sky.
It's decaying.
Yeah, casting this bruised violet twilight over continents that have seen civilizations rise and crumble to dust 1,000,000 times over.
Right.
Suddenly, that internal human alarm system, completely obsolete. We're looking at an ecological and moral landscape that is literally a waking nightmare.
It really is.
So, welcome to our deep dive for today. We are exploring a world where curiosity is a fatal genetic defect, and the pursuit of immortality requires just horrific, systemic predation.
Yeah, it's dark.
Very dark. So today we are tracking a wandering free sword named Fassenrath through the incredibly dark, masterfully constructed universe of Glen Cook's The Devil's Tooth.
A classic.
And the driving question we really need to answer today is this. If every single element of a dying ecosystem is hyper-adapted to kill you, what happens to the human soul when the only way to survive is to, well, become a monster yourself?
That is the core of it right there. And Fassenrath is the perfect lens for examining that question.
He really is.
Because he is an anomaly. A man out of time in his own time. I mean, he wanders a world that is running on empty, carrying true steel weapons inlaid with gold spells.
Which is so cool, by the way.
Oh, incredibly cool. But his most dangerous possession isn't his sword.
No.
No, it's his mindset. I was born in Stark country to a woman named Judy with the bells on.
I love that name, by the way. Judy with the bells on.
Right. It paints such a picture. And he possesses this striking physical appearance. He's incredibly tall, has a long hatchet face, and these piercing violet eyes.
Okay, so he looks intense.
Very. He is built for violence. But he is driven by this profound, almost tragic need to understand things that just no longer matter.
Right. Which I want to challenge the logic of his existence right out of the gate here, because we really have to establish the baseline lethality of this setting.
We do. It's essential.
Fassenrath is sitting by a dusty road, and overhead is this ancient, bloated sun. And Cook describes it as a dull red face blemished by leprous black sunspots.
Leprous black sunspots. The imagery is just visceral.
It hangs there like a vast, bloody balloon. So close you feel like you can reach up and touch it. Right?
Yeah, looking ready to just collapse under its own weight.
Exactly. It sullenly warms a tired earth, creating these distorted, elongated shadows everywhere. You see that absolute desperation immediately. Fassenrath is just sitting on a stone, calmly carving a small wooden doll while waiting for a river to cross the road.
And this is crucial, it's not a river of water.
Right. Tell him what it is.
It is a glistening purple-black river 100 yards wide, and it extends for miles. It's a migratory horde of 3-inch galloglass beetles.
Ugh. 3-inch beetles.
Hundreds of thousands of them moving south, their mandibles clacking ravenously. They represent pure, mindless, desperate consumption.
And it's so creepy because the text notes that a single beetle stops to consider if it wants to eat Fassenrath.
Yes, the insect physically weighs the option of attacking a fully grown, armed human being.
Which is terrifying. I mean, Fassenrath dispatches it with a flick of his true steel knife, but he does not retrieve the blade.
Because the beetles are just the vanguard.
Right. Hanging around the edges of this horde are the executioner ants.
Oh, the ants!
They are large, pale blue, and equipped with venom far more lethal than the beetles. They surround the dying beetle with staggering military efficiency.
And Cook gives us this incredibly vivid sensory detail here.
Oh, yeah, with the sounds, right.
Exactly. You can hear the Potonus snip-snip as the ants literally dismember the writhing beetle. And then you catch a waft of a sour odor.
Their chemical victory scent. It's wild.
It is. Immediately, a secondary cast of smaller, dull-colored slave ants rushes in to chop up the meat and haul it away.
While the blue executioners form a defensive skirmish line like mandibles raise, basically daring Fastenrath to make a move.
This micro-ecosystem serves as the thesis statement for the entire dying Earth setting.
How so?
Well, it demonstrates a hyper-efficient hierarchy of violence and parasitism. Everything feeds on something else. There is absolutely zero wasted energy.
Wow.
The fact that ants have evolved slave castes and coordinated military skirmish lines shows an environment where natural selection has been pushed to a horrific militaristic extreme due to, well, severe resource scarcity.
Think about your own neighborhood for a second, right?
Yeah.
Imagine if the stray cats and the pigeons had evolved into coordinated, venomous pack hunters just to survive the winter.
That's a great analogy. It's terrifying.
It's like an extreme apocalyptic version of the Australian outback. Literally every square inch of flora and fauna is fundamentally designed to end your life.
Which makes Fastenrath sitting there, casually whittling a doll while surrounded by venomous tactical ants, undeniably impressive.
It's badass. But it also raises a massive contradiction. The text explicitly states that in this final age of Earth, no one dares stand alone. Humans survive in huddled, paranoid masses.
Right.
So how does he survive a single day out there by himself?
He survives through a mastery of absolute stillness and hyper-awareness. Yeah. He respects the lethality of his surroundings. Notice he doesn't panic. He doesn't make sudden movements to retrieve his knife. He sits like a stone statue.
Right, because any movement triggers the ants.
Exactly. But while he has mastered the physical art of survival, he is burdened with a psychological flaw that actively works against him.
His curiosity.
Yes. Cook makes profound assertion here, stating that Fastenrath's curiosity is an atavism.
A genetic throwback.
Right. A survival trait from an age when the world was friendlier, when sticking one's nose into the unknown was not a contra-survival trait.
Wait, I have to push back on that framing a little bit.
Yeah, okay, go ahead.
Calling curiosity a survival trait from a friendlier age feels a bit generous, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, in our world, curiosity leads to innovation, sure.
Right.
But in his world, it's a biological bug. It is a severe evolutionary glitch. If sticking your nose into a bush gets your face melted by acidic sap, the curious gene should have been eradicated from the human gene pool millions of years ago.
That's a fair point. It is a glitch, biologically speaking. But philosophically, it is the only thing keeping him human.
Oh, I see what you mean.
In an ecosystem where investigating the unknown guarantees death, curiosity becomes an act of profound rebellion.
Right, he found that crumbling manuscript.
Yes, in a Lothman tomb, and it mentioned the word moon, but just as he started reading, the ancient parchment powdered to dust in his hands.
That is so frustrating.
His drive to find out the meaning of that single forgotten word is an ancient human instinct. It's rebelling against the stagnant darkness of his present age. He is driven by a need to understand the universe rather than just survive it.
And that stubborn refusal to just put his head down and survive is what drags him off the wilderness roads and into the city of Christiangren.
And this brings up a fascinating contrast.
Yeah, because the brutality Fastenrath survives on the road is entirely natural. It's an ecosystem fighting over scraps. But when he crosses the threshold into civilization,
He finds that society hasn't conquered that predation.
no, it has cultivated it. Christiangren, a city whose secondary names are dark and deadly, is this squalid collection of ochre buildings huddled together.
When the sun sets, the shadows shift strangely, making the streets feel like the bottom of an underwater trench.
Civilization in the dying Earth is really merely an extension of the food chain, isn't it?
Yeah.
Just draped in architectural decay.
Exactly. And Fastenrath enters this claustrophobic urban nightmare searching for a man named Valdur the Eye.
Valdur the Eye.
Valdur is an entity who supposedly knows everything, who might be immortal, and who only parts with his hoarded knowledge at exorbitant prices.
So Fastenrath arrives at Valdur's residence. It's a large, dark blood house on the corner of Metal Street and Music Lane. And the gate is left open just a crack.
An invitation.
Right, an invitation.
Yeah.
Which, in a city called Dark and Deadly, is a screaming warning sign.
Absolutely.
He peers through the ironwork and sees Valdur's garden. And the biological mechanics described here they are astounding. It is a botanical exhibit curated by an apex predator.
The botany of evil.
Yes. The plants have adapted to the depleted, dying soil by shifting their nutrient intake entirely to fresh blood and meat.
It is a brilliant manifestation of the world's underlying mechanics. The ecosystem has collapsed to the point where photosynthesis is insufficient under a rotting sun.
Let's dissect how these plants actually function, because Cook doesn't just call them magic plants and move on.
No, he gives us the grisly details.
First, you have the dancing sabers. These are plants with rigid sword-like leaves that actively thrust at anything warm-blooded passing by.
And it gets worse.
Oh, so much worse. The tips of the leaves secrete a specialized anticoagulant drug. The plant stabs you, the drug prevents your blood from clotting, and you bleed out directly onto its root system, enriching the soil with iron and protein.
It's so meticulously awful.
And then there's the skullbell tree.
That one is haunting.
It features white blossoms, shaped like tiny skulls that twirl in the breeze, producing a fruit that smells irresistible.
And the fruit acts as a paralytic bait.
Fastenrath actually watches a small rodent eat one, right?
Yeah, he observes a small rodent eat one and instantly freeze in place, rigid as stone.
Just frozen.
Within seconds, hair-fine rootlets rise out of the earth, piercing the living animal's skin to slowly drain its nourishment.
While it remains paralyzed but conscious. That is.
It's nightmare fuel.
And then you have the butterfly tree.
Right, which lures insects with gaudy, heavily scented blossoms. It traps their feet in sticky gum and forcefully implants its seeds inside their living bodies.
Turning the insects into walking, biological incubators that eventually fall to earth to sprout new trees. The sheer malice of this garden cannot be overstated.
We really need to connect this botanical malice to the central theme of the narrative, don't we? Adaptation through parasitism.
Absolutely. These plants can no longer rely on ambient resources, so they survive by violently draining the vitality of others.
Just like the people.
Yes, this garden is a mirror reflecting Valdor himself. And as the story unfolds, it reflects all the immortals clinging to power in this era. They exist solely by consuming the life force of lesser beings. So Fastenrath braves this garden. He rings the doorbell, which is literally a serpent's head bellows. The heavy bronze door swings inward, and the meeting with Valdor is deeply unsettling.
Valdor is not a man sitting in a chair.
No. Cook describes the darkness inside the house as being thick as treacle. Valdor is bundled in heavy robes that are somehow blacker than the profound shadows around him.
His face is glossy like polished ebony. The only visible features are these cold, glowing blue eyes.
Fastenrath experiences this dreadful realization that he might be conversing with a man-shaped hole torn in the fabric of reality.
Valdor represents the ultimate hoarding of knowledge and life. He has survived for millennia by withdrawing into the darkest, safest corners of the world, manipulating others to take risks on his behalf.
And when Fastenrath asks his question, what or where was the moon, Valdor sets his price.
Which highlights a crucial aspect of the dying Earth's macroeconomic structure.
Yeah, I was really struck by the total absence of conventional currency here. No one is haggling over gold coins or silver pieces.
When the world is ending, shiny metal has zero intrinsic value.
Exactly. The economy is entirely based on transactional power and the exchange of ancient, dark artifacts. You buy knowledge by paying in blood or stolen relics.
Valdor reveals that Moon is not a place on their current maps, but he withholds the full answer. Instead, he directs Fastenrath to a city in the west called Warrisden.
Warrisden.
Above Warrisden looms Mount Arsalan, and atop that peak sits the Monastery of the Moon.
Okay.
Inside this monastery is a massive idol holding a fang-shaped ruby in its mouth, known as the Devil's Tooth. Valdor demands that Fastenrath steal this ruby and bring it to him in exchange for the answer to his question.
And when Fastenrath points out that Warrisden is a known cesspool of dark magic and evil, Valdor drops this incredibly bleak piece of philosophical justification.
Oh, this quote is chilling.
He says, "Everything is dying. It is in the nature of a created universe that all things shall die in time, and all creation is innately evil."
Think about the arrogance of that worldview.
If everything is innately evil and dying anyway, it gives Valdor a blank moral check to use whatever horrific methods he wants to extend his own lifespan.
It is weaponized nihilism used as a defense mechanism for extreme selfishness.
Weaponized nihilism.
Yeah.
Valdor has lived for so long and consumed so much life to maintain his existence that he has completely lost the capacity for empathy. The suffering of others is just a resource.
Just fuel.
Exactly. And before Fastenrath leaves, Valdor asks for a small favor. He hands over a brown packet tightly wrapped in thin skin.
And Fastenrath makes a conscious effort not to think about what species provided that skin.
Right, asking him to deliver it to a colleague in Warrisden named Ghoul.
And Fastenrath takes the deal. His atavistic curiosity burns so fiercely that he is willing to walk right into a known death trap.
He sets out for Warrisden.
And the journey introduces a threat that operates on a completely different psychological vector, the tinsel forest.
Oh, this is a fascinating ecological hazard. He spots this woodland, situated downhill from the main road. The tree trunks resemble dark glass sculptures, and the leaves are formed from razored metal and silica.
When the wind blows through them, it creates a melodic song like millions of tinkling wind chimes.
Fassenrath knows it is a lethal trap, but his memory of why is fuzzy. He forces himself to sit under a lone weeping pine, which is thankfully out of season, so it isn't currently dripping contact poison.
Which is just a great detail.
Yeah, everything is poisonous. So he sits there and begins whittling his wooden doll just to jog his memory.
The whittling is such a fascinating grounding mechanism. It is not an idle habit or a nervous tic. It serves as a tool for extreme mental focus.
How does that work?
The physical, repetitive act of carving allows his conscious mind to relax just enough to access deeply buried tavern tales and historical rumors, while keeping his body completely still and non-threatening to the surrounding environment.
So it's basically active meditation.
Exactly. And through this meditation, he remembers the specific danger of the tinsel forest. It is the territory of a dryad.
A dryad.
An immortal, semi-divine female entity who somehow survives amidst the flesh-rending metallic foliage.
And because immortality in this world is always predicated on death, her survival means she is a predator.
Naturally.
He hears her singing rising from the veil. It is a siren call, incredibly sweet and biologically compelling. He actually spots glimpses of her naked flesh flickering behind the deadly razor-sharp leaves.
Enticing him to walk into the forest and be shredded to pieces so she can consume his remains.
The compulsion is so strong that Fassenrath has to chant a harsh Lothman marching tune just to drown her out.
And he goes a step further.
Yeah, he takes his true steel knife and physically pierces his own palm.
He uses acute physical pain to shatter a magical psychological compulsion.
It's intense.
It is a brilliant, visceral moment of self-preservation that demonstrates the exhausting mental toll of traversing this landscape. You can never let your guard down.
Every beautiful sound, every enticing image is a highly evolved trap designed to consume you.
Which brings him to the gates of Waresden.
Right. And if Christengren represented the predatory architecture of civilization, Waresden represents the architecture of pure decay.
Decay is the perfect word.
It is described as a crumbling gray city situated beyond the River Brine, populated almost entirely by evil old men waiting out the twilight of the world.
The city gates are shattered and remain unrepaired.
When night falls, the streets are entirely empty. Fassenrath keenly observes that the absence of normal nocturnal predators, like stray dogs, scavengers, rats, is deeply terrifying.
Because it implies something much worse has claimed the territory and scared the regular predators away.
Right. He navigates these silent streets to arrive at Ghoul's house, which is rotted, worm-eaten, and practically collapsing. And Ghoul himself, he is a grotesque figure.
Baldur had described Ghoul as a creature with the soul of a spider, and his physical form mirrors that corruption.
Definitely.
He is a dwarfed, misshapen man. His entire right arm and the right side of his body are withered into near immobility. He has burning red eyes and heavy, drooping mustachios that hang down like insectoid mandibles.
But despite his appearance, he invites Fassenrath inside, formally invoking the ancient tradition of guest right.
Guest right. It is such a jarring concept to encounter here.
It really is. The citizens of Waresden are completely depraved. They engage in dark magic, murder, cannibalism, yet they cling fiercely to this one arbitrary ancient ritual of hospitality.
Yes.
Ghoul tells Fassenrath, "All my power will stand between you and disaster as long as you remain in my house. Outside, I promise nothing."
Why do utterly corrupt societies bother keeping these performative rules?
It feels like they maintain the illusion of honor purely for their own amusement.
It is precisely for their own amusement and to create a false sense of security. Societal decay often leaves behind the hollow shells of ancient laws.
That makes sense.
By rigidly adhering to guest right inside the house, Ghoul heightens the terror of what happens outside. The contrast makes the eventual betrayal much sharper.
They sit down to a meal, and Ghoul immediately begins mocking Fassenrath's mission. He knows exactly why Fassenrath is there.
He laughs about how thieves come endlessly, sent by Baldur to sate his lust for life, and none of them ever return.
And this conversation delivers the crucial lore drop regarding the mechanics of the Devil's Tooth.
It is not just a decorative jewel.
No. Ghoul explains that the ruby is a cusp. It functions as a metaphysical channel and broadcast point for the raw power of life.
It is the very engine that keeps the ancient monks on Mount Arslan alive across eons.
It operates like a localized immortality battery. Valdur, who is ancient and slowly deteriorating despite his blood garden, desperately needs this greater talisman to secure permanent undeath.
We must consider the strategic implications of Ghoul revealing this information.
Right, why tell him?
Exactly. If Ghoul understands the immense power of the tooth, and he knows his rival Valdur desperately wants it, why freely explain its metaphysical mechanics to a wandering thief? What does Ghoul gain by arming Fastenrath with the truth?
Ghoul games chaos. He is a master manipulator who thrives on disruption. He wants Fastenrath to fully grasp the stakes, knowing it will increase the thief's desperation, and likely lead to a more spectacular, entertaining failure on the mountain.
Ghoul is playing a twisted game of chess, using Fastenrath as a pawn to spite Valdur.
And we see the immediate result of this manipulation the next morning. Fastenrath decides to slip out of Ghoul's house early, thinking he's being stealthy, creaking down the dark, worm-eaten halls. He opens the front door to leave, and the door itself screams.
Ghoul, goo, goo, goo.
A magical alarm ward woven directly into the wood.
Fastenrath bolts, and as he sprints away, he hears Ghoul shouting in exultation from inside the house.
He hears cruel, mocking laughter drifting down from the high towers of the surrounding mansions. Heavy bells begin tolling across the city.
The evil old men of Warriston have been waiting all night for him to step past the threshold of guest right.
The second he is no longer protected by the rule, they trigger the Wild Hunt.
The concept of the Wild Hunt is a potent symbol in historical mythology, often associated with gods or fae spirits riding through the winter sky.
But Cook strips it of any divine majesty here.
He really does. Here it is reduced to the ultimate, twisted, aristocratic blood sport. The decadent lords of Warriston breed massive glue hounds, specifically to hunt human beings for entertainment.
It underscores the total eradication of human empathy. Fastenrath is reduced to the status of a fox.
The sensory details of this chase sequence are phenomenal.
Absolutely. You have the doleful, bloodless baying of the blue hounds echoing down the empty, gray cobblestone streets.
The maniacal laughter drifting on the morning breeze from the aristocrats lounging in their curtained sedan chairs being carried by terrified servants.
Fastenrath is looking over his shoulder, seeing these lean, whippet-like hunters closing the distance. But Fastenrath, possessing a huge chest and long legs, is a born runner.
He executes a desperate, lung-burning wind sprint.
He runs with such explosive speed that he physically beats the snapping teeth of the lead hounds to the shattered gates of the city. He crosses the threshold, and the hounds immediately skid to a halt.
Because they are magically trained never to set foot outside Warriston's borders?
It provides a momentary, gasping reprieve. He has escaped the immediate confines of the city, but the geography of the hunt forces him upward.
The lords of Warriston are blocking the road back.
He has no alternatives but to begin the brutal ascent of Mount Arslan, heading directly toward the Monastery of the Moon.
He is driven by the architects of decay right into the domain of absolute horror.
And the mountain environment is actively hostile. Before he even gets close to the monastery, he has to navigate broad patches of dragon's teeth.
This is another brilliant, horrifying piece of botanical engineering by Glen Cook.
Seriously, from a distance, it looks like normal sand or sparse pale grass, but it is actually a subterranean predatory plant.
When the vibrations of a footfall trigger it, long, jagged, tooth-like spikes shoot upward from the dirt to stab through the victim's feet.
These spikes are coated in a fast-acting poison that induces unconsciousness. The victim collapses onto the patch, allowing hundreds more spikes to pierce their body and slowly drink their blood for nourishment.
It's a landmine that eats you.
Exactly. Fastenrath barely avoids stepping directly into a dense cluster, but a rogue spike grazes the palm of his hand, and he has to furiously suck the poison out of the wound just to stay awake.
The dragon's teeth serve as a natural, self-sustaining perimeter defense. It is a moat of blood-drinking vegetation protecting the holy site.
As he climbs higher, navigating past a grove of skullbell trees, he encounters the inner ring of defense.
And this barrier is entirely psychological.
The bone field. Fastenrath arrives at a partially collapsed stone wall, and scattered across 100 yards of the steep slope are bones. Thousands and tens of thousands of human bones, bleached pale under the violet sky.
The detail that makes your stomach drop is that they are all completely stripped of flesh.
Yes. And every single one of the larger femur and humerus bones has been violently cracked open. Something had been systematically extracting the marrow. 1,000 broken skulls leer at him from the dust.
Put yourself in his boots for a moment. Consider the crushing psychological weight of standing in that graveyard.
Oh, I can't even imagine.
He is looking at the final resting place of every previous adventurer, every master thief, every desperate soul Valdur ever manipulated into climbing this mountain.
And in that moment, listening to the deep, weird chanting drifting out of the time-worn, featureless Gothic cathedral ahead, he realizes exactly who cracked those bones.
The holy men, the monks themselves.
Fastenrath huddles behind a large block of fallen stone because the situation is escalating behind him. Ghoul's forces have actually followed him up the mountain slope.
Ghoul's hatred and greed are so profound that he is determined to see this hunt through to the end.
But Ghoul's footmen, the men carrying his sedan chair, are terrified. They see the bone field, they hear the chanting, and they refuse to advance another step toward the monastery.
This standoff is where the narrative sharply pivots from creeping atmospheric dread to kinetic, visceral horror.
Right.
Ghoul's porters drop his heavy curtain sedan chair onto the rocks. Inside, the curtains begin to thrash violently, as if the occupant is suffering a massive seizure.
Agonized, inhuman shrieks echo out, vibrating with dark magic. And then the fabric bursts apart.
Ghoul reveals himself as a wurt creature.
But he doesn't transform into a sleek wolf or a majestic eagle. The magic is corrupted by his own physical decay.
Right.
He bursts out as a massive, deformed red bloodhawk. Because his human arm was withered and paralyzed, one of his massive wings is equally deformed.
He ascends staggeringly into the violet sky, wobbling and shrieking in frustrated agony. He's barely able to maintain altitude.
The sight is so utterly grotesque that one of his own footmen leaps backward in pure terror, landing squarely in a dense patch of dragon's teeth.
Oh, man.
The subterranean spikes shoot up, piercing the man instantly, and he collapses, screaming as the plant begins draining his fluids. It is complete bloody chaos on the slope.
And it is amidst this chaotic distraction that the massive iron-bound doors of the cathedral slowly grind open.
The monks of the Monastery of the Moon finally emerge to investigate the disturbance.
Their physical description is vital for understanding the true, degrading cost of the immortality they possess.
They step out into the fading light, and they are incredibly tall, significantly taller than Fastenrath, but they are so emaciated they resemble skeletal stick figures wrapped in parchment skin.
Their heavy brown burlap robes seem far too heavy for their frail frames.
They lean forward precariously, their weight supported by long, thin, carven black staffs held in their left hands. They move with a slow, deliberate insectoid grace.
They have been stripped of every vestige of humanity. If Valdur is a sophisticated hoarder of dark knowledge and Ghoul is a chaotic, scheming manipulator, the monks have regressed entirely. They exist in a state of pure, rote, predatory instinct. When one of the surviving Warsden footmen breaks and tries to run back down the mountain, a monk simply raises his black staff, points it casually down the slope, and the fleeing man instantly freezes, paralyzed, and he crashes hard into the rocks.
The application of their magic is effortless, absolute, and devoid of passion.
The monks gather around the paralyzed footman like a flock of impossibly thin vultures. They begin cackling shrilly in an unknown ancient tongue, producing long knives from their robes.
It is systemic, ritualized cannibalism. They have survived for eons beyond their natural lifespan solely by consuming the flesh and cracking the bones of anyone who ventures up the mountain.
And Fastenrath watches this butchery from his hiding spot. He witnesses the ultimate truth of his world. This is what forever costs. Immortality is always predicated on the gruesome death of others. It requires a total surrender to degradation and horror.
Yet instead of succumbing to terror and fleeing into the dragon's teeth, Fastenrath utilizes his most vital survival skill.
Recognizing an opportunity.
Exactly. While the monks are entirely focused on butchering the Warsdeiners outside, Fastenrath breaks from his cover and sprints directly through the open doors of the cathedral. He runs toward the epicenter of the danger to secure the prize.
He navigates through the vast ruined nave of the cathedral. The air is thick with ancient incense and decay. At the far end of the hall, squatting ominously in the deep shadows of the apse, is the idol.
It is a massive, black, Buddha-like statue carved from oily, dark stone. It is fat, multi-armed, and profoundly ugly.
And resting securely between its carved stone fangs is the devil's tooth.
A glowing red ruby the size of a fist that looks as though it has been freshly dipped in arterial blood. It pulses with a sullen magnetic life of its own.
Fastenrath scales the idol, climbing into its massive lap, and prepares to smash the ruby loose with the heavy pommel of his true steel sword.
But just as he raises his arm, he hears the scuffling footsteps of priests returning to the nave. In a panic, he scrambles upward, finding a narrow crack in the stone and squeezes himself inside the hollow interior of the idol itself.
This internal chamber is a fascinating architectural detail.
Isn't it?
It is clearly a maintenance space for the ancient priesthood. It contains a small desk and chair carved directly from the idol's internal stone structure, positioned behind eye-level peepholes that look out through the statue's face.
It is the physical mechanism by which high priests of a bygone era would hide and project their voices, giving the idol the illusion of speech to command their followers.
And resting undisturbed on this hidden stone desk is a book.
The book. This is the intellectual payoff for his entire harrowing journey. The book isn't made of fragile paper or crumbling parchment. The pages are formed from incredibly thin sheets of silvery metal, deeply engraved and bound together with steel rings,
It is written in Old Highlothman.
which Fastenrath can actually read, thanks to the intensive education he received as a child from his old mentor, Frail of Chesku.
Right. He begins reading these ancient chronicles, getting completely absorbed in deep planetary history. While mere inches away on the other side of the stone wall, the returning priests are literally dragging in the butchered remains of the footmen, splashing fresh blood on the devil's tooth in a horrific ritual.
The juxtaposition here is brilliant. You have violent, visceral horror occurring in the physical space, separated by only a thin veil of stone from a profound intellectual epiphany occurring in Fastenrath's mind.
Yes. Through the metal pages, he finally uncovers the true meaning of the word moon.
And this revelation fundamentally shifts the genre of the story. Moon wasn't a forgotten kingdom. It wasn't a mythical god or a sunken continent.
No.
The metallic pages reveal that the moon was a massive celestial orb, a companion to the Earth in the night sky.
Millennia in the past, a shift in orbital mechanics caused this massive satellite to drift too close to the planet. The immense tidal forces of Earth's gravity tore the moon apart in orbit.
This celestial disintegration caused apocalyptic global cataclysms. Entire continents were shattered by tectonic upheaval, oceans boiled, and new mountain ranges violently erupted from the crust. It was an extinction-level event buried deep in the planet's geological strata.
Those blood-red drops, the tiny glowing asteroids Fastenrath occasionally saw streaking across the violet night sky. They are the final burning debris of the shattered moon, still falling from orbit thousands of years later.
We have to pause and appreciate the sheer, crushing weight of time implied by this revelation. Consider the geological timescale required for a planetary civilization to completely forget that they once had a moon.
It's almost unfathomable.
For a fundamental astronomical reality, something that dictates the tides and illuminates the night, to devolve into a confusing myth, and then degrade further into a single, baffling word in a dead academic language.
It injects a layer of hard science fiction and deep-time post-apocalyptic dread into what previously felt like a pure, dark fantasy narrative. The world isn't just magically dying, it is dealing with the astronomical fallout of a shattered solar system.
It is a staggering realization. But Fastenrath is brought back to the present danger by the sounds outside the idol. The shadows in the nave are lengthening.
The ritual concludes, and most of the skeletal priests depart, carrying the meatier persons of their sacrifices deeper into the monastery, leaving behind only one priest who appears to have died during the frenzy, lying motionless on the altar directly before the idol.
Fastenrath knows this is his window. He makes a profound moral decision in the dark. He is going to steal the tooth, but he is absolutely not going to deliver it to Valdor.
He realizes that arming Valdor with this localized immortality battery would be an unforgivable crime against whatever is left of the world.
He slips out of the crack, clings precariously to the idol's carved lip, and violently smashes the glowing ruby loose with his sword pommel. The gem dislodges and falls heavily onto the idol's stone tongue.
And that is precisely when the trap springs shut. The supposedly dead priest lying on the altar suddenly rises.
Cook masterfully subverts our expectations here, turning a moment of triumph into an immediate, suffocating panic.
The priest's skull-like face is twisted into a sallow mask of pure, predatory hatred, his elongated fingers reaching out like the legs of a giant spider.
He lunges upward and grabs Fastenrath by the throat with terrifying, unnatural strength. Fastenrath is forced to drop his true steel sword because the blade is simply too long to swing in the tight confines of the idol's lap.
The two of them tumble backward, crashing into the slick pile of sacrificial gore. The priest's skeletal thumbs are ruthlessly crushing Fastenrath's windpipe.
Desperate and suffocating, Fastenrath's hand wildly searches the stone, his fingers closing over the heavy pointed base of the devil's tooth. Gripping the ruby like a makeshift dagger, he violently stabs the priest directly in the chest.
And through this desperate act of violence, Fastenrath and the reader finally experiences the metaphysical mechanics of the tooth firsthand. It is not just a battery, it is an active conduit for the transfer of vitality.
The physical sensation described is intoxicating. The tooth begins to hum violently in Fastenrath's grip, pulling at the priest's flesh as if inherently desirous of the blood.
As the ruby sinks deeper, Fastenrath feels a sudden, explosive surge of new strength flowing up his arm and expanding into his chest.
The exhaustion of the climb vanishes. He suddenly feels invincible, capable of fighting off an army. The tooth is forcibly extracting the priest's hoarded life force, his very soul, and pumping it directly into Fastenrath's veins. He feels decades younger.
And as the priest crumbles into dust beneath him, Fastenrath realizes the terrible truth. This is the path. This intoxicating rush of stolen life is the will-o'-the-wisp that Valdur, Ghoul, and countless others have pursued into madness.
We must critically examine Fastenrath's reaction here. The text explicitly states that this sudden influx of stolen power is as haunting and deeply attractive to him as a draught of nice stream, a highly addictive narcotic wine known in their world.
He feels the rush, and his mind immediately begins rationalizing ways to keep the gem, to use it to ensure his own survival.
I have to challenge the idea of Fastenrath as a noble survivor in this moment. He enjoys the rush. He literally drains a man's life force to enhance his own vitality, and he likes how it feels.
Well, sure, he's human.
But how does that make him fundamentally any different from the cannibalistic monks or from Valdur? If you give an addict the drug and they revel in the high, they are part of the same cycle of corruption, aren't they?
The crucial difference lies not in the temptation, but in the subsequent rejection of that temptation.
Okay, fair.
Yes, he feels the intoxicating high, and he understands precisely why the lords of this world become monsters. The power is designed to warp the user's mind, to make them view other living beings merely as batteries.
Right.
But Fastenrath possesses a unique psychological resilience, forged by his arduous life on the road. He recognizes the corruption creeping into his thoughts. He acknowledges the immense temptation to become a god among dying men, and through sheer force of will, he rejects the premise.
He violently shoves the pulsing ruby deep into his heavy leather purse, cutting off the sensation, grabs his sword, and runs.
Which triggers the chaotic climax of the narrative. The theft of the tooth disrupts the magical equilibrium of the entire mountain.
The remaining priests sense the sudden absence of their immortality source and begin shrieking in absolute terror. They flood back into the nave, hunting him.
Fastenrath sprints out of the cathedral and into the boneyard, only to find the sky erupting in violence. Ghoul, still trapped in the form of the deformed red bloodhawk, swoops down low over the chaotic scene.
And Ghoul executes a startling tactical maneuver. He drops a fragile glass globe onto the stone courtyard. It shatters, releasing a dense, billowing cloud of heavy poison gas directly over the pursuing monks.
The skeletal priests begin staggering, coughing up black bile and collapsing. Ghoul is providing localized air support.
But we must be clear, Ghoul's actions are driven entirely by selfish opportunism, not altruism.
Oh, absolutely. Ghoul is neutralizing the monks to clear the board, ensuring he alone can corner Fastenrath and claim the ruby.
However, his chemical warfare inadvertently springs another layer of the trap on Fastenrath. The heavy poison gas that incapacitates the priest also settles over the main pathway, entirely cutting off Fastenrath's ability to retreat down the mountain via the known route.
He is cornered against a steep drop, and then the third apex predator enters the fray.
Veldur the Eye finally arrives on the mountain, and he has shed his heavy robes and human guise. He descends from the violet clouds as a massive, horrifying bat thing, possessing great leathery black wings and a glossy, polished ebony body that seems to absorb the remaining light.
He is laughing a booming, demonic laugh as he crashes into Ghoul midair.
It is an insane, monstrous battle occurring directly overhead, the giant bat thing and the crippled bloodhawk shrieking, tearing at each other with talons and fangs, raining dark blood down onto the bone field.
The sheer scale and terror of this aerial duel is so overwhelming that the remaining Warsden lords, who had been waiting nervously down the slope in their sedan chairs, completely break.
They succumb to blind panic and attempt to flee through the darkness, predictably stumbling directly into the patches of dragon's teeth and being systematically slaughtered by the subterranean vegetation.
This overwhelming chaos provides Fastenrath with a desperate opportunity. He uses the deep shadows and the distraction of the aerial battle to slip over the edge of the plateau.
He utilizes the faint, pulsing red glow of the devil's tooth inside his purse as a dim lantern, carefully picking his way down the treacherous, uncharted cliffs of the mountain.
He navigates back through the Skull Bell Wood, painstakingly avoiding the paralyzing fruit and the blood-drinking grass. The descent takes him hours of grueling, tense focus.
By the time dawn breaks, painting the sky a sickly yellowish red, he manages to cross back over the River Brine. During the crossing, he discovers the mangled corpse of the ferryman. Realizing Valdur the vampire bat had slaughtered the man during his approach the previous night.
Fastenrath finally limps back to the edge of the deadly tinsel forest, miles away from the mountain. He is exhausted, bleeding from dozens of shallow cuts, but alive.
He sits down heavily on a boulder, listening to the melodic tinkling song of the razor leaves and the sweet compelling voice of the dryad singing down in the vale.
And here, in the quiet, bruised aftermath of the nightmare, Fastenrath experiences a profound psychological breakthrough regarding his own past.
He begins to think deeply about Frey Livchescu, the kind, chubby Lothman scholar who took him in when he was just an orphan street rat.
Frey was the man who taught him languages, who taught him to appreciate art, and who gave him a home.
He is also the man Fastenrath eventually murdered in cold blood to steal the magical true steel swords he now carries. The heavy guilt of that murder has haunted Fastenrath his entire adult life, driving his restless wandering.
It is a masterful thematic culmination by Cook. The physical horrors of the mountain unlock a deep psychological truth.
Fastenrath realizes that without having intimately observed the monstrous, life-draining nature of Valdur and the monks, he might never have understood his old mentor's true motives.
Fastenrath comes to the devastating realization that Frey Livchescu was, in his own civilized way, seeking a form of immortality.
Not through dark magic, and not through cracking bones from marrow, but through psychological parasitism.
The scholar was trying to meticulously mold Fastenrath into an idealistic, perfect copy of himself. He was attempting to stamp his own values, his own intellect, and his own worldview onto his young student's mind, effectively overriding the boy's natural autonomy to ensure his own legacy survived the dying world.
It's a softer, more insidious form of consumption. Think about how often we see echoes of this in our own lives, Consider the parent who forces their child into a specific career path to fulfill their own dashed dreams. Or the mentor who becomes hostile when their protege develops independent theories.
Very common.
Fastenrath realizes that even this supposedly good man was forcing a selfish kind of foreverness onto someone else. Fastenrath's entire life of violent wandering, his compulsive atavistic curiosity, has been a subconscious rebellion against being molded into a vessel for someone else's ego.
He needed to carve his own path, even if he had to use a stolen true steel blade to do it. It is a devastating, liberating epiphany.
This epiphany solidifies Fastenrath's ultimate character arc. To survive in a dying Earth with your humanity intact, you must actively and totally reject the cycle of parasitism.
You cannot achieve immortality, whether physical or psychological, without destroying someone else's autonomy.
And armed with this philosophical clarity, he engineers a brilliant, final master trap to permanently rid the world of the devil's tooth.
The execution of this trap is pure tactical genius.
He waits by the road and watches a fat merchant. Ironically, a man who had shared a kind word and some food with Fastenrath days earlier get lured into the tinsel forest by the dryad siren song.
Fastenrath coldly watches as the man is shredded by the leaves and killed by the beautiful naked creature.
Once the dryad is satiated, sitting on the forest floor with her eyes glazed over in post-feeding lethargy, Fastenrath acts. He calmly walks directly into the grove of razor-sharp steely whips, completely ignoring the danger.
And sits down cross-legged directly across from the dryad, right over the warm corpse of the merchant. He pulls out his wooden block and his knife and begins to carve.
He leverages art to captivate a predator. The dryad is an immortal creature of rote instinct, completely innocent of human concepts of good or evil. She operates on pure animalistic hunger.
But she is profoundly mesmerized by the sudden, deliberate creation of the wooden doll.
Fastenrath's hands move with practiced grace, and he finishes carving the wood into the distinct, rounded shape of a fat human baby. He holds it out and offers it to her.
And the monster takes it.
She crushes the wooden baby to her bare breasts and begins softly crooning to it, rocking back and forth.
He weaponizes her own biology against her. He plays on her forgotten, long-denied maternal instinct.
It is an incredible gamble. overriding her apex predatory nature with a deeper, older biological drive to nurture. And then, while she is distracted by the doll, he slowly pulls the devil's tooth from his purse.
The fist-sized, glowing red ruby.
He gently offers that to her as well. She's fascinated by the shiny, pulsing bauble. She takes it in her other hand, crushing both the wooden doll and the immortal ruby tightly to her chest, her attention completely absorbed.
He has successfully transferred the ultimate metaphysical prize to the most dangerous, geographically unassailable guardian in the region.
But the trap isn't designed to kill the dryad.
No, the trap is baited for his pursuers, who are inevitably tracking the magical signature of the gem.
Right on cue, the brush rustles, and Ghoul steps into the clearing. Ghoul has managed to resume his dwarfish, withered human form after the aerial battle. He surveys the scene, the glazed dryad, the fresh corpse, and the priceless treasures clutched in her hands.
And Ghoul's inherent greed overrides whatever tactical sense he has left. He genuinely believes he can snatch the jewel from the distracted creature and flee before Valdur arrives.
He steps quickly forward and physically snatches the tooth from her grip.
The Dryad's reaction is instantaneous and explosive. The gentle, tinkling melody of the tinsel forest instantly transforms into a deafening, angry roar of grinding metal.
The razor branches stir violently. She leaps with the sudden, terrifying speed of a striking snake, her elongated nails driving directly for Ghoul's eyes, her sharp teeth clamping onto his throat.
Ghoul is caught in an inescapable death grip before he can even utter a single defensive syllable. His all-consuming greed becomes the direct instrument of his suicide.
It is brutal and shockingly fast. And just as Ghoul is ripped apart, Valdur steps out of the deep shadows of the pines.
The ancient entity still wrapped in his unnatural, treacle-thick darkness.
He chuckles a cold, hollow laugh, reaches down into the bloody melee, forcefully snatches the devil's tooth from the dying Ghoul's hand, and immediately turns to run back to the safety of the road.
The Dryad, still physically entangled with Ghoul's corpse, is a fraction of a second too late to attack Valdur directly. But she doesn't need to reach him. She raises her voice and sings a sharp, discordant song of command to the forest itself.
The entire tinsel forest, already agitated and writhing, springs into insanely aggressive, lashing life. The razor-edged silica leaves and steely whip branches reach out like 1,000 metallic tentacles converging on Valdur.
His illusion of perfect, untouchable blackness is instantly marred by bright stripes of scarlet blood as the forest shreds him.
One of his arms is nearly severed at the shoulder by a heavy branch. In his blinding agony, his mangled hand involuntarily spasms, losing its grip, and he drops the devil's tooth onto the forest floor.
He hurls his battered body through the final barrier of thorns and escapes onto the dusty road with his life, but he leaves the ultimate prize behind.
The devil's tooth remains safely resting on the metallic moss, claimed by the Dryad, situated in the dead center of an enraged, magically impenetrable forest of living metal.
Valdur knows exactly where the key to his immortality lies, but he knows he can never ever reach it without being shredded to dust.
And Fastenrath. He'd quietly slip backward into the brush the exact moment Ghoul grabbed the gem. He emerges from the far side of the forest, his clothes torn and his skin covered in shallow bleeding cuts, but he is fully alive.
He turns his back on the tinkling forest and begins walking away from Mount Ursuline.
He walks away with his life intact, his obsessive curiosity finally sated regarding the apocalyptic history of the moon, and carrying a highly valuable Lothman metal book that will surely fund his next journey.
But vastly more important than the physical survival is the moral victory. He stared down the absolute ultimate temptation of the dying earth, the narcissistic, narcotic promise of immortality, and he actively, decisively rejected it.
He accepts his own mortal, flawed nature. He chooses to live with the heavy, unresolvable guilt of his mentor's murder, choosing the pain of a finite human existence rather than erasing his humanity with stolen life force.
It is a profound, quiet victory in a world defined by cosmic defeat. In a universe obsessed with carving out a legacy, with extending life at the horrific expense of others, and hoarding power while the sun rots in the sky, Fastenrath proves that the most radical act of survival might just be accepting our own transience.
Our own temporary, fleeting nature is what gives our actions meaning.
Embracing that transience is the only effective way to break the cycle of parasitism. If you refuse to live forever, you refuse the requirement to consume the lives of others to maintain yourself.
Which brings us back to a final thought for you, the listener, to carry with you today.
Something to ponder.
Fastenrath realized that his mentor, a kind, well-meaning scholar who gave him a home, tried to achieve immortality, by quietly molding his student's mind into a rigid copy of his own.
It wasn't overtly evil like Valdor's Blood Garden, but it fundamentally denied Fastenrath his own selfhood.
Look closely at your own life. Look at your career trajectory, your personal relationships, or your family dynamics. In what subtle, well-intentioned ways are we attempting to achieve our own personal immortality by forcing our values, our unfulfilled dreams, or our strict expectations onto the people around us?
And what is the actual cost to their freedom when we demand they carry our legacy?
It requires a deeply uncomfortable level of self-reflection to answer that honestly.
It really does. Because sometimes the motivations aren't clearly drawn, the lines aren't binary like a hot stove.
Sometimes the most dangerous instinct isn't the one that tells you to pull back from danger. The most dangerous instinct is the one that tells you to hold on to control forever, no matter what it costs the people you claim to care about. Thank you for walking this dark road with us on this deep dive.
Until next time.
Keep questioning the rules of your world.